Hi, I'm Rhonda Pick, Managing Editor with Pig Health Today, and with me is Dr. Jordan Graham. He's a veterinarian at the Swine Vet Center in St. Peter, Minnesota. Jordan, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Managing biosecurity on pig farms can be challenging, especially when other capital investments are needed. As a veterinarian, how do you handle a situation like this?
A big part of what we do at the Swine Vet Center, and really most swine veterinarians in general, is trying to help balance between capital investment and risk reward on biosecurity investments. It's easy to look at a price tag on what it's going to take to improve biosecurity on a farm, and some of these measures are not inexpensive. They're pretty costly, but what we have to weigh in and out is the cost of not implementing some of these things. And it's pretty easy for us as veterinarians to walk into a farm and say, here's the 10 things that we have gaps in biosecurity. And it's overwhelming to us even to think of all the things that we need to do on a farm to get biosecurity where it needs to be top notch. But we have to sometimes take a step back and rank those items and put it into place of what's the most important today. What are some of the easier biosecurity improvements? What are some of the more difficult ones, more costly ones? Older farms that weren't designed with biosecurity in mind, or we've been trying to implement and patch some things in. They're never going to be perfect, and no farm is perfect in biosecurity. But how can we make it better than what it is today? That's what we really are trying to focus on.
So fostering a culture that supports and values biosecurity is part of this equation. What recommendations do you have for building awareness, within the hog operation, whether it's owners or staff members, to really make biosecurity an important part of their experience?
Yeah, I mean, you nailed it. Where biosecurity is a culture, and being on farms where that culture is in place it's fun to see, because it's never a question of, are we going to pass things across the clean, dirty line, or are we going to step outside? No, it's understood that those things don't happen. How do you foster that culture of biosecurity on a farm? It starts from the top down. People act by example, right? If they see the owner come onto the farm and they're not obeying the biosecurity rules that they have in place, you can bet they're not going to do it when they're not there. So if we have biosecurity practices in place, we need to lead by example, and B, we need to audit those practices. So having the staff know that those processes that are in place are going to be watched, are going to be monitored, and are going to be held to an expectation that they'll understand that, yeah, this is important enough that somebody is paying attention to whether it's happening or not.
What do you consider to be some of the most essential biosecurity practices for preventing disease?
Yeah, this is where it comes back to what are the practices that we have to have in place. I mean, obviously the basic people movement biosecurity, shower in, shower out, moving material in and out of the farm. We've had a lot of work done in the last year of understanding fumigation rooms and how they do or don't work, right? We had the assumption in the past that if I put supplies into my fumigation room, I turn the fogger on, that we're good to go. But some student projects have proven, multiple student projects have proven that that's not the case necessarily. Ranking from best case scenario down to what are some simple things we can do on the farm today. The pinnacle of good biosecurity would be whole farm filtration. Nothing moves in and out of the farm other than through complete disinfection and downtime. Not practical on all farms, especially finishing sites, older sow facilities where that capital investment is probably not going to be well spent. What can I do that's practical? So what are some things we can put in the farm that are good everyday biosecurity measures? UV chambers for entering small supplies and lunches in and out of the farm. Lots of good work done on those here in the recent few months. Next one that's a big issue that I see on a lot of farms, especially older farms that aren't set up with this in mind, is mortality removal. So getting sow carcasses out of a sow farm in a biosecure manner. that dead drop or door that we're bringing mortalities out of, that's coming into contact with rendering or composting equipment, which is contaminated. So how, oftentimes we have just a door on the side of a building where sows are removed through that door. Would it be better spent to set up a drop or somewhere where we can physically get the sows out of the farm or mortality out of the farm without having to touch the outside? Again, if it's difficult to do, it's not going to get done right. So let's make it as easy as possible for the staff to do it right. And that way we know we have better confidence that they'd have to go out of their way to do it wrong than it is, and it's easier just to do it right.
So how do you evaluate when it makes sense to make a large capital investment?
Create a list, create a living document of what are all the things in a perfect world, how would I improve biosecurity on my farm? And write it down, because one thing that I found, a lesson learned on my end this summer or this spring and summer is coming into the massive supply chain disruption that we had and a huge upset in markets, is that we had a lot of things planned to get done this summer, capital expenditures to improve the farms, that quickly went on the back burner. They got shelved, and sometimes they got forgotten too, right? Because we didn't have them written down. So having a living document or a list in place of expenditures that are needed to improve biosecurity, the costs associated with, and what are the ones we want to do first? Is it either from a cost standpoint or a risk reward standpoint, right? So we talked about UV chambers, right? So a UV chamber, relatively inexpensive when you look at a total cost, and relatively easy to implement. The top of the list is going to be full farm filtration, probably the most capital intense biosecurity measure. But between those two things, there's a lot of things we can do to improve biosecurity. And having that in a list and stack ranked ahead of time helps us to better prioritize going into a time period when we know we're going to have capital to expend on some of these items. Having that in place just makes it a lot easier for veterinarians and also for producers to go back to that list and take action on it.
What about managing compliance with best biosecurity practices? What do you recommend on that front?
Again, going back to audit the process. Putting a process in place or a protocol in place is fantastic, but if we're not auditing to that expectation, it will not get executed on a consistent basis. So from a production staff standpoint, when visiting the farm, always lead by example, and also audit the processes you have in place. And it should be, if it's not every visit, it should be regular enough to where staff will understand that it's important that you will be monitoring the processes you put in place, and it will be expected no matter what.